The second phase of our participatory human-centric Futures Fit foresight process is called sense making, where we aim to make sense about the signals of change we have gathered. The aim in sense making phase is to create a shared understanding about important signals that are related to or have an impact to the focal question. Here we utilize Futures with Trendsfall and Futures with Trend cards. So Anu, could you first tell me more about the trend wall? What does that mean?
Trend wall is a kind of a view where we visually see what kind of patterns of change do we see that are related to the focal question. And the best part of the wall is that you actually identify the past, present and future about the changes that are related to related and important to the focal question. But at the same time you co-create together those stories, those futuristic stories, what happens next. And at the same time you go through the discussions that are really important, such as why this change happens. So what are driving this change and why does it happen? Why is it important for the focal question? So it's a really good tool to gather around these changes and really go through the discussions that are needed.
Okay, and the content then in the trend wall is actually being transformed into a trend card. So could you tell me about the trend card? What is it?
Well, as you said, when we have the trend wall, when everybody understands the changes and they have created storylines about the hindsight, insight, foresight, in other words, the evolution of change, we translate those into trend cards. And trend cards are very concise, crystal clear definitions and descriptions about changes. So they have a very clear title, what is the change all about? But in addition to that, what we really emphasize in our process is that they are really related to the people and to our everyday lives. So if the change happens somewhere around us, what does it mean to people, to us, and in this case to Europeans? And trend cards are very, very good in terms of describing and being very concrete about the change. That's why we have the signals and that's why we have the database, so that we can create evidence, manifestations and examples about the change, what it could mean in terms of new services or new organizations or businesses or patents, new research, you name it. But it's very good that they are very concrete in terms of being people-centric as well as very concrete. And also what we aim at with the descriptions of change is that they are about people's everyday lives, and it includes the practices that we do, the behavior that we have, but in addition to that, they talk about our motives, our values and attitudes, and those are really, really important. So what the trend cards really are, they are not the outcome of the process. We are in the second phase of the process, so there is much more work to do. But what they do, they concretize and they give us a platform to discuss. So they ask really the questions, what if this happens? What next? And kind of these why questions, why we do this, why and how this could happen. So it's initiators of discussions that we don't necessarily have otherwise. Yeah. And I think that's the best kind of thank you from our customers and from the project participants that they really go in deep dive into discussions that they haven't ever discussed before. So how you can utilize trend cards as tools, you can ideate new solutions. You can also see some risks there, so you can actually create risk planning. You can see windows of opportunities, because when you see the changes, they are very novel, or then they are really kind of going towards the mass. You can see the window of opportunity there. So you can really be very systematic and very intuitive, but yet kind of a developer with the trend cards.
Okay, so the trend cards were created in 10 European countries, so there were quite a big pile of them. And they are these two-sided, very concrete and very comparable cards describing the change. So how do you make sure these cards are actionable?
Yes, so when we have local nuances and local trends from 10 European countries, I think that's the richness that we created in this project. So that we can be very local, because locality creates novelty and it creates also innovations. But at the same time, when we have lots of cards, lots of trends, I think the best way to approach what is a kind of a good collection or collage of trends is to make this deep-led analysis. So to make sure that you have societal, you have demographics, you have technology there, so that you cover basically the holistic viewpoint of the world. But at the same time, you don't need to be 100% covering everything, because the thing is that when you have a puzzle with 100 pieces, and when you identify dozens of them, not all of them, but just a couple at least, then all of those missing puzzles and pieces that we have there are actually identified when we discuss, when we encounter new people with the trend cards, when we start the discussions, then you start to see the counter trends and drivers and hinders of change, and you go to those discussions that we need to have in order to actually create the shared understanding about the future.